is a charming neighborhood in which I sometimes walk. It's full of beautiful and well cared for homes. One of the homeowners has placed a tasteful painted wooden sign in the picture window that proclaims to passersby the word that best describes their life: blessed. Blessed is one of those words we see often, isn't it? It has become a popular word in the home decorating world, and it also pops up on many social media posts celebrating happiness, because it turns out you are allowed to boast about your successes, from healthy children to economic prosperity, just as long as you add the humble hashtag blessed. What does blessed mean? Where does blessing come from? Who receives it and why? This can get us into some interesting theological territory. Let's begin with the most famous and ancient biblical story of blessing. Do you know Father Abraham and Mother Sarah? They are the great patriarch and matriarch of the Abrahamic faiths, which are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Now, their story spans multiple chapters in the book of Genesis, the first book in our Bible. Early on in chapter 12, we learn that Abraham and Sarah were called by God to do something extreme. According to the biblical narrative, Yahweh said to Abram, "Leave your land, your family, and your father's household for the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name respected, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. Those who curse you, I will curse. All the families of the earth will be blessed because of you." Now, the person recounting the story clearly had a strong bias toward Abraham and Sarah. Imagine thinking that God would actually curse anyone who was at odds with these two humans, however faithful they may have been. Such is the pedestal upon which history has placed poor Abraham and Sarah. I don't envy them one bit. They were just as human as anyone, and their story proves them to be no less prone to bad decisions than any of their descendants. However, the author of this narrative does allow a glimmer of humility to shine through in just a few key lines, which have become a great gift to us all. Did you hear? I will bless you. You will be a blessing. All the families of the earth will be blessed because of you, they were told. The shorthand for this is blessed to be a blessing. Now, I'll concede that's a bit long for a wooden sign in your window, but it's much more in keeping with the Spirit of God's ongoing love story with the world, isn't it? Any blessing we receive in God's upside-down pyramid scheme is meant to flow out to bless others, many, many others. Jesus embodied this fully. From the moment he received God's blessing at his baptism, he committed the rest of his life to blessing others. Whom did Jesus bless? The deserving, the pious, the morally superior, those who had proven their worth and their obedience to God? Heavens, no. Jesus offered blessing to those cursed by the morally upstanding, showing that God does not, in fact, curse those whom the rest of us would like God to curse. God would prefer them to be blessed. Even tax collectors, can you believe it? Here's the story from the Gospel of Matthew, the story of a tax collector named Matthew. And you can bet your last taxable dollar that as a tax collector, everyone cursed that guy, working for the Roman Empire like he did, taking his people's money for the enemy, and pocketing a little extra for himself just because he could. From Matthew 9, beginning at verse 9, hear this. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax collection station, and he said to him, "Follow me." And Matthew got up and followed Jesus. And as he sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to Jesus' disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when Jesus heard this, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners." I think we can all understand why a tax collector would have been considered a sinner under the circumstances, but was he also sick? Jesus was known for healing the sick. What business did he have with Matthew? That guy probably ate his fill and had access to whatever primitive medical care was available given his ill-gotten financial stability. What kind of healing did he even need? When Jesus brought Matthew to the table with the others, something very broken in that poor rich man began to heal. Picture Ebenezer Scrooge eating Christmas dinner with the Cratchit family. All the wealth in the world could not mend the deep sorrow of a lonely man separated from human love, but connection could. We know the backstory of Ebenezer Scrooge, right? Heartbreak and intense regret, which hurt him so deeply he lost his empathy for others. You know what they say, hurt people hurt people. It's true, but it's also true that healed or healing people can heal people. And that's the transformation Jesus offered Matthew. Matthew's salvation, meaning his healing and his wholeness, was found at the table of grace, where Jesus personally vouched for him, where Matthew began learning to live as a giver, not as a taker. Now, I don't know what kind of circumstances led Matthew to become a tax collector. Probably financial instability, but maybe he was a misfit to begin with. We have no idea what his backstory is, but whatever led Matthew to pursue that career path, I suspect it wasn't a charming story. Maybe he had his own Ebenezer Scrooge past. Maybe he had lost his family to poverty and starvation, or seen it happen to others and determined that would not be his fate. He made a sacrifice in favor of wealth and lost something far more precious: community and connection. What a blessing Jesus gave Matthew, restoring him to something more precious than silver, more costly than gold, a second chance on eternal life, meaning a life lived according to the will of the Eternal One, following Jesus, who was the way, the truth, and the life. Matthew was blessed to be a blessing. Meeting Jesus was just the first step in a long journey of healing and wholeness. That first meal would be one of many with Jesus and the others. Matthew would spend 3 years traveling with the Rabbi Jesus and learning how to bless others, effective immediately, because right after this first encounter, Matthew would witness some incredible acts of blessing from his teacher. While Jesus was in the middle of being scolded by some of the more pious crowd for not being religious enough, specifically for eating instead of fasting, someone burst in to ask him a huge favor. It was a leader from the local synagogue who knelt at Jesus' feet, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay hands on her, and she will live." And Jesus got up and followed him with his disciples. Then, suddenly, a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she said to herself, "If only I touch his cloak, I will be made well." Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. When Jesus came to the leader's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in, took her by the hand, and the girl got up. And the report of this spread through all that district. A day in the life of Jesus. Maybe not what Matthew had expected, but it was exactly what Jesus had promised when he said, remember, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. I have come to call the righteous, not the righteous, but the sinners. That's it. For in the eyes of the religious purists, the bleeding woman was tainted. Their religious beliefs led them to view a woman with persistent bleeding as unclean, forbidden to have any physical contact with others. She should not have touched Jesus. Furthermore, without the benefit of medical knowledge available to us now, those ancient people would have assumed that she had brought that condition upon herself through her own sinfulness. And having touched Jesus, she had conferred her sinful impurity upon him. He should have made a beeline to the priest to make a sacrifice to purify himself. He could have suggested she do the same if she wanted healing so badly. But proving his thesis that God desires mercy, not sacrificed, he showed that woman mercy, declaring her healed by her faith. What do we know of her faith? Absolutely nothing. But she sensed that the path to her healing was connection with Jesus, and he refused to deny her that. Mercy, not sacrifice. And then, Our heads are spinning. Off to the dead girl. What do we know of her faith? Nothing. Her father was just desperate for a miracle, but the rest of the family members, if you recall, laughed in Jesus' face when he showed up. Never mind, he went inside to touch the dead girl. Also taboo, touching a corpse was forbidden, a sin. Yet Jesus extended the blessing to someone for whom a blessing seemed outright preposterous. A dead girl, and she got up quite alive. No sacrifice needed, thank you, just mercy. I wonder about the impact of those lessons on the newly minted disciple named Matthew. What kind of teacher was he following who could bring wholeness and healing by proximity, by touch, by the sharing of a meal? Was this what blessing meant? And could it really be offered to anyone, even the untouchables and the tax collectors? A physician for the sick, blessing for the cursed. Matthew could have taken his blessing and run, but he stuck around. Perhaps being well instructed in his faith tradition, he remembered that old story about Abraham and Sarah. Blessed to be a blessing for all families, for all nations, for all faith traditions. A disciple doesn't just accept Jesus into their heart and life and then curse others who don't. A disciple follows Jesus' example, showing up in the cursed places and blessing the heck out of everyone. Crazy, isn't it? We don't know whatever happened to the bleeding woman or the resurrected girl, but if they had any understanding of their faith tradition, I suspect they went on to offer blessing wherever they could. Maybe less dramatic than the kind they had received, but sometimes the blessing is simply to offer connection to those who need it. The Matthews, the sick, the lost causes that no reasonable person would continue rooting for. When the wounded are healed, they often become healers themselves. Healing people, healing people. Where have you encountered blessing in your life? A second chance, lucky break, a leg up, a helping hand, natural talent, hard work, smart choices, dumb luck. Maybe you earned it, maybe you didn't. But blessing is a blessing. And in God's economy, we know what we're supposed to do with it. We know what Matthew did with it. He followed Jesus to share it far and wide all the days of his life. May we go and do likewise, counting our blessings so that we can share them all the more extravagantly. As John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, famously said, do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. May you be blessed to be